Hi everybody, Mr. Hines here again. We're going to talk through and kind of review all the concepts we're going to be learning in October. October's full of lots of little bitty tricks. When we put them together, we learn a lot. You'll be able to play a lot of different songs. So we're going to kind of review that for those of you who may need a little extra review, or for those of you kind of working ahead, you can kind of be seeing what's coming up. We're going to try to go through and explain everything all the way through page 11 through number 41. That gives us our first 7 notes. All right, so here we go. Remember, you can always rewind or go back over these certain things over and over as many times as you need to. And also remember, please talk or ask your teacher if you have any questions about anything. All right, here we go. First thing we're doing, of course, is reviewing the fact that we'll be playing a 5-note scale regularly. If you've not gotten yours filled out, you want to make sure you get it filled out appropriately. And of course, you can talk to your teacher and make sure you get that taken care of. Another thing I want to mention is we're also going to be doing a lot on maintenance, learning how to clean our instruments, oil our valves, grease our corks, all the different things we need to do. But we're not going to do it in this video. Look for the maintenance video for your specific instrument to find out all that information. Here we go. Let's take a look at the 5-note scale. Look here, we're taking a look at a flute part, and you'll notice that we have all the notes are the first 5 notes that we're learning, but we also have fingerings, but they're blank. So what you'd want to do, of course, is on the left side, you want to figure out the name of the note, and then on the right side, we're going to color in the appropriate fingers to make that note happen. So like on this one, that'd be a B flat. We always use capital letters, so I'm going to put a capital B, and then since there's a flat there, we're going to put a flat afterwards. And so we'll know that that is a B flat. You don't have to write the word flat. We'll just write a B. We'll put a flat sign after the B. That makes it a B flat. To play a B flat happens to be a thumb, 1, 4 pinky. So I'm just going to color in that sideways teardrop. And I'm going to color in the 1. And then I'm going to color in the 4. And then the pinky. And then that's how we would do that all the way through there. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit so you can take a look. Make sure you can see that good. Good. And let's take a look at a couple of other ones just for examples. On the clarinet, the first note would be a C. So I'm going to put a capital C. And then to color that in, I would do the thumb. Then 1, 2, 3. Nice and dark so you can see that, right? And we'd go that all the way through. As we get to the next one, which happens to be an alto saxophone part, reminder for anybody using a treble clef sign, which is the sign that we see right here, that's what you learned with the recorder. And that's where we say to figure out the name of a line note, we would do every good boy does fine. And for a space note, F-A-C-E, so we take a look here. This is the lines going through the middle, so we call that a line note. And we go from the bottom up, every good boy does fine. So the good is the note we're looking at right there. So I'm going to put a capital G, and then I'm going to color it in, which happens to be, in this case, 1, 2, 3. Good. The only trick on the tricks for lines and spaces is for the clarinet trumpet, you start below the treble clef. So this line is something we haven't done. It's called a ledger line when we put a little bitty line through there. This one doesn't have a ledger line. It's a space note below there. So we just have to memorize those for right now. This is a C. And this is a capital D. We always use capital letters for the names of our notes. A C, in our case, is open for a trumpet, and for a D, it would be filling in 1 and 3, just like that. Now, as we move on, let's do one more real quick for the trombones. This would be the same thing for baritones. Notice they're not using a treble clef, they're using a bass clef. And on the bass clef, it's a little bit different, and if you want to, you could write this up here, and that would be for line notes. We say, good boys do fine always, which is G, B, D, F, A. Good boys do fine always from the bottom up. So in this case, there's a line note, line going through the middle. G, B. This is a B flat, capital B, flat sign. Sorry, I write kind of messy when I'm writing sideways. For spaces, S-P-A-C-E-S, spaces, all cows eat grass, and that would be A-C-E-G. So like the second note here, that's a space, all cows, that's a C, capital C, all right? Now for a B flat, that's first position, we just put a 1 there. For a C, that's 6th position, put a 6 there. Now to finish up the rest of those notes, you can go over to page 8, and that'll show you your 2 new notes. In this case, that'd be an E flat for the trombones, and then an F for the second line of the trombones. All right? Now I'm turning over to page 8 and we're looking at number 16, hot cross buns. And this is the first line that we look at and we're really thinking about counting. And so we look and we see this kind of note here happens to be a half note. It looks like a whole note, but it's got a stem on it. Whole note is just the circle only, just like we had on page 6. Half note, half note, half note. This is a half rest. It's when the rectangle is sitting on top of the line. It's lighter. It's only got 2 beats of rest in it. And then we come down to, of course, quarter notes that we did on number 15. Quarter, 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 quarter. 1 beat each, 2 beats each, and then, of course, 4 beats each. Now, first thing we want to do on this is write in the counting just so we remember, just so we know exactly how that works. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to write into the first one's worth 2 beats. And by the way, we're going to know it's going to be 4 beats total because of that 4 on top of that 4. We're going to do that again in a minute. But anyway, underneath I'm going to write a 1 and a 2 because it's 2 beats, so it gets beats 1 and 2. This one's also worth 2 beats, but it gets beats 3 and 4. So I'm going to put a 3, 4 under that one. Next, we have a whole note. We have a bar line. That bar line looks like a giant number 1, so we know the next thing after it's always going to be beat 1. And here underneath that one, that's worth 4 beats, so I'm going to write 1, 2, 3, 4 under that. Now we have again the half notes again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's another half note, 1 in the bar line, so we have 1, 2. Now the 3, 4 goes to this rest. Beats 3 and 4 will be a rest there. Then we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Every quarter note gets 1 beat. Here we go, another bar line. 1, 2, 3, 4. Bar line. 1, 2 for that half note. 3, 4 for that half note. Here's a whole note. 1, 2, 3, 4. Another thing I want to point out while we're looking at this, sometimes we'll talk about measure. So this first, up to the first bar line, that's a measure or a chunk of music. So that's measure number 1. Here's measure number 2 because there's a bar line. Bar line measure number 3. Bar line measure number 4. Bar line measure number 5. Bar line measure number 6, 7, 8. Sometimes we'll say, everybody look at measure 7 and 8, and that's what we're talking about. Count the chunks of music, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. We can look at that. So that's how you write in the counting. And of course, we're going to clap. When we clap and count, what we also want to do is we want to clap and show the beginning and ending of every note. Well, it's easy to do the quarter notes because 1 clap for each one. 1, 2, 3, 4. That works out fine. But what do we do with a half note? Well, with a half note, we were going to clap and grab and give an impulse for the extra beats. So a 2-beat half note would be 1, 2. So we have 1 clap because it's 1 note, but we're making it last 2 full beats. A whole note would be 4 beats. 1 clap and then 3 extra beats. 1, 2, 3, 4. Get the idea? All right, so here we go. As we're taking a look at that, if I was clapping this first 2 measures, I'd go 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Get the idea? All right, then we come over to our quarter notes. We get 1 clap for each one. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we repeat again at the end. And so that's how we're going to clap so that we know how long the notes are supposed to last. The next thing we point out, of course, is that for every clap, that's like a T. That's how we start the note. For every clap, it would be a T, T, T. 3 claps, 3 notes, 3 T's. That's how we begin every note. Now I've turned over to page 43, and you'll notice we have a whole page full of rhythms here. Whole page full of rhythms, and we're going to be able to use these to count and practice our counting and here looking at some different types of rhythms. If you remember at the beginning of the year, we used this as our test. Number 6, we have all quarter notes and quarter rest, and that of course would be 1, 2, 3, and then rest on 4, which would be 1, 2, 3, rest on 4. And then, of course, we have whole notes, whole rest, whole notes, whole rest, half notes, half rest, and we'll be using page 43 as well. Turning back to page 9, I'm looking at number 25, which happens to be our test for October. And I just want to mention a couple of things as we're doing this. There's 3 things about practicing when you're practicing at home. First thing, if you start looking at 25, start trying to play the whole song, you'll probably find that you can't do it all. But it's just too much information for you to try to do at one time. So there's 3 things I teach about practicing. Number 1 thing about practicing is, first thing you do is you try it and you mess up. Well, then stop and slow it down. Slow it down a little bit. Let your brain have a little more time to think about it. Your body have time to react to it. So you might just go really slower. Bum, 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 bum. 3, 4. If you slow it down and it works, great, keep practicing, then you'll be able to speed it back up. But if you slow it down and it still doesn't work, the next thing you want to do is break it into pieces. And this song is a perfect song to do that on. You could break it into measures. Notice that measure 1 and 2, they kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's kind of a nice chunk because there's a rest there. But look at measure 3 and 4. Here we go, another little chunk that you could work on just by itself. And then 5 and 6, then 7 and 8. Well, so there's 4 good chunks that you could work on. Work on measure 1 and 2 till you get it right. Then work on measure 3 and 4. Then you could put that whole first 4 measures together. Then you could work on measure 5 and 6, and then 7 and 8, and be able to put the whole thing together. Break it up into pieces. Another kind of piece you might want to break it up into is notes, reading notes. Every time we get new notes, like on the 5-note scale, or here we're now working on those notes when we get to some of these newer notes, when you look at these newer notes, that's the hard part. Learning to play them is quite easy, but learning to actually read them, that's the trick of new notes. We got to make ourselves read them. Don't go, oh, I'm going to try to memorize. Just learn how to play those, learn how to read those. It's super important and super easy if you'll just make yourself do that. So, one thing you might do is say and finger it. Here I'm looking at a trumpet book, and so as a trumpet player, I might go, oh, we could say it and finger the notes at the same time. And I could do something like C, let me get over here, C, D, E, D, C. And of course you could do that on your instrument while you're counting or while you're playing and saying the names of the notes. And we could come to the next one, D, E, F, E, D, right? And you could sit there and say the names of the notes and finger them just to practice, not even blowing through your instrument. This was a clarinet, we could do the same thing. C, D, E, D, C, right? And so we could go through each of the chunks and do it that way. I switched over to a flute book so you can see a little bit different look here. So the flutes could be doing the same thing, B flat, C, D, C, B flat. And of course they would be doing it with their fingers also. B flat, it's hard to see with this. B flat, C, B flat, C, D, C, B flat, and you could finger that while you're saying that. That'd be one of the pieces you could break it up into. You could also break it up into rhythms only, or anything you wanted to, that whatever you're having trouble with, go just to that one piece so you can practice that one piece over and over until you get that right. Now, this is your test for October. So again, learning 2 measures at a time and putting it all together. Now, so the first trick of practicing is slow it down. The second trick is breaking it up into pieces. And then the third trick is it's a numbers game. And what I mean by that is when you finally go through and you can actually play the whole song, great. Now, play it 25 times. When you can play the song and you play it 25 times, guess what? You're going to be good at it and probably ready to pass your test. When you actually play it 50 times, it's going to be super easy and you'll be able to play it without even thinking about it. It'll be so fun and so easy. Okay? So, this number 25 times, you're going, wow, that's a lot of times. Well, you don't have to do 25 times in one day. Once you've worked up where you can play the whole song, 25 times. Well, maybe that's going to be you're going to work really fast and try to do 5 times a day. Play that 5 times a day. It takes about 30 seconds to play one of these songs. Well, if you play that 5 times, that'd be 2.5 minutes. Well, that's not very long, and it's a lot easier to think about that. Go, okay, I'm going to spend 3 or 4 minutes on this song every day, and guess what? 5 days later, you ought to be able to play it pretty easily. So don't try to think, oh, I'm going to be really smart and I'm going to be able to play it after 2 or 3 times. Don't even think about that. Play it 25 times, over and over and over and over. Let your muscles memorize what's going on. We're going to talk a lot about muscle memory, and then also let your eyes learn to track the music with your eyes. We talk a lot about staring at the music, looking at the music. Track these notes one at a time. Track the notes and the rest one at a time. Okay, so the 3 parts of practicing are 1, slow it down. If you slow it down and it still doesn't work, second thing you're going to do is you want to break it up into pieces. And then the third thing to remember is, hey, don't make it hard on yourself. Play it 25 times and it'll you'll be good at it, and then play it 50 times and it'll be super easy for you. If you'll turn over to page 10, we're going to take a look at a couple of concepts that are at the top in yellow. It's kind of an interesting thing to notice as you go through the book. Anything you need to know is going to be in yellow. Information is going to be at the top of the page in yellow, and then notes are going to be on the left side in yellow boxes as well. So as you're going through the book and moving ahead, don't be afraid to go to the next page and just read the top, and if you understand it, you can move on or check out one of the videos to help you understand it. We have 2 concepts at the top of page 10. One's called time signature. We're going to get to that in a second. But let's take a look at this one called a tie. Okay, notice that it is a curved line, It's a curved line between two notes. And now it could be a curved line going over the top, or it could be going under the bottom. This happens to be a clarinet book, so it's a curved line under the bottom. And that curved line, we're going to see it come up again in a few more pages, but this one is a curved line when they are the same pitch. When you see two notes together and there's a curved line between them and they're the same pitch, we call that a tie. So just imagine that this note right here is throwing a rope over to this note, and we're going to tie those two notes together. If the first note is 2 beats, or we could say it's, let's say it's 2 pounds, if it's heavy, 2 pounds, and then this is 1 beat, that's 1 pound, you tie them together and you'd be worth 3 pounds. Same thing happens here in music. It's 2 beats long, this one's 1 beat long, you tie them together, and it turns it into a 3-beat note. It's just one way of writing the notation to get a 3-beat note. If you look down at number 31, you'll notice on 31 that you're going to see all these ties coming in on number 31. So you see measure 2 of 31, we have the half note tied to a quarter note. And again, flutes are going to see the curved line going across the top. So that's called a tie. Now take a look up here at the top on the other side. It's called a time signature. Now we're going to be using this word signature more than once. In fact, if you look on the next page, you're going to see the word key signature, but we're not going to talk about that right now. We're going to talk about it later. Let's just look at this time signature. Time signature is a really nice, important concept here. If you look, in this case, you see 2 numbers at the beginning of every single song. Every single song. You see 2 numbers here, and with the exception of this one right here that's got a C on it. We'll talk about that in a second. But here's 2 numbers, a 4 over a 4, here's a 2 over a 4, here's a 4 over a 4. Those 2 numbers are very important. They tell us 2 pieces of very important information. It's not a fraction. It's telling us that the top number is going to tell us, if you look up here again at the top, there we go. Look again at the top number tells us how many counts or beats are going to be in each measure. So sometimes all the songs we've done so far have been 4 beats in a measure, but it's possible for them to be 3 beats in a measure, or 2 beats in a measure, or 5 or 9, or all different kinds of things. Okay, so right now the top number is going to tell us how many beats are in a measure. The bottom number, if you turn that into a fraction, that would tell you what kind of note's going to get the beat, or what kind of note's going to get 1 count. So if you put a 4 on the bottom and you put a 1 on the top, that'd be 1/4, or we could say that represents a quarter note. If you put a 2 on the bottom and a 1 on the top, that would be a half, or a half note would get a beat. So there's more than just quarter notes that can get a beat. You could put an 8 on the bottom, and if you put an 8 on the bottom and a 1 on the top, that'd make an 1/8, and then that 1/8 note would get 1 beat. Right now, everything we're going to be doing is going to have a 4 on the bottom, so everything's going to be a quarter note getting 1 beat. I remember a teacher, a friend of mine who's now retired, he used to teach a little poem that we now use, or a little saying we now use. And so if we say, what's the time signature? Let's just say the time signature right here. And we would say 2/4. The answer would be 2/4. 2 over 4, 2/4. And they say, what does that mean? And then kind of in a sing-songy kind of way, 2 beats to a measure, a quarter note gets 1 beat. Then, of course, he was kind of a crazy guy, and he'd have them stand up and they would bump their hips together and say, woo! So you don't have to do that, but it's still a good way to remember our time signatures. Let's take a look down here on number 30. The time signature says 4 over a 4, and that stands for 4 beats to a measure. A quarter note gets 1 beat. Woo! There's always someone who likes to do that. Then we take a look at that number 31, and that's the one that's a little tricky because you see a C, and if you remember, you may have read on the top of the previous page, we have up here in the top here, we had some information. We had the repeat sign, but we have this C. C stands for common time, and common time stands for or equals 4/4. The reason they do it, a lot of the things that have to do with the way we write music was because everything used to be done by hand. And when you're writing all those little 4 over 4, 4 over 4, 4 over 4, it takes a long time. It's a lot easier to write C, 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 C down the page. So that's the reason they came up with that C, because it's a common time signature and we use it all the time. So that's the 2 new concepts there at the top of page 10. Additionally, on page 10 and page 11, we're going to see 2 new notes. We've got our 5-note scale we've been working, and now we're going to turn it into a 7-note scale. And we're going to be adding a new note on top on number 30, and then a new note on the bottom on number 36 on the top of page 11. Now for each of you it's a little bit different, but you can see the fingerings there. For a flute it's a G, which is a thumb 1, 2, 3 and a pinky, and then the low A for the flute would be thumb 1, 2 and a pinky, blowing low and then blowing high for the new G. On a clarinet we're adding the A, which is this little bitty teardrop on the front for the clarinet. For the clarinet, I've got the clarinet sitting here, and here's your top left hand, thumb on the back, 1, 2, 3. But to play this new note, there's this little teardrop right here. And we're actually not going to pick the finger up and move it up to there. We're actually just going to kind of rock it up on that. I'll show you this trick here again in a minute. We call it rock and roll. But anyway, that's where the one is for the new A for the clarinet. Then notice on the other side of the page, then we're going to have, for the clarinet, we're going to have a low B, which is thumb 1, 2, 3, and then the second finger on the right hand. That's the first time we're going to be using a note on the right hand, or a fingers on the right hand. Trumpet and trombone and baritone, you've got a new trick coming up with these notes, because when you see the new note on number 30, for a trumpet, it's going to be an A, the letter A, and it's a higher note, but it's a 1 and 2. You already know an E, which is 1 and 2, and so this is a new low, high, low for you. Earlier we did open, open, open for a C, G, C to learn our low, high, low, and now here's a new one. With 1 and 2 down, you can play an E, or a higher A, or back down to an E. Just like you see on number 31, you're going to see we're going to be doing this low, high, low thing. This whole song for trumpets is 1 and 2 valves, 1 and 2 down. Same thing happened for the trombone, which would be, instead of an A, it'll be a high G, but that G is going to be 4th position, just like your D4 has been. So now you can be able to play a low, which is a low 4, which is going to be a D, or a high 4, which is going to be a G. With the baritone, the same thing happening with the 1 and 2 down, but you got the D and the G exactly the same way. So you're all being introduced to another low, high, low, where it makes a difference on how you're blowing and how you're playing, what you're doing with your lips, not the fingers changing to make the different notes there. For the trumpet, for the trombone, we come over here to the other page, and your new note on 36 is a low A, which happens to be 2nd position. Now 2nd position is, if you imagine having that all the way in for 1st position, then if you move your slide out just enough where you see a little bit of silver of the slide, that's 2nd position. Just a little bit of silver showing is 2nd position. For the trumpet and the baritone, that's going to be a 2nd valve. That's a new one. Low B for trumpet, low A for the baritone. Saxophones, you're doing something similar here that we see with the clarinet, which is going to be 1, 2, 3, and then a 2nd finger on the right hand to make it an F sharp. And then your high note is just a little higher than the D, which you had the D, which was thumb 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and now it's going to be thumb 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5 on the right hand. So that's our 2 new notes that we're going to be making up our 7-note scale with. And the trick there again with the trumpets, trombones, and baritones, the brass players, is that they are going to be now having a new low, high, low. But the clarinets, if we look at 31 with the clarinets, I'm going to see if I can get back in front of here again. And I've got that the same, let me zoom out a little bit. Sorry. And we've got the same fingers going here. I'm going to turn sideways so you can see that I'm playing an E, thumb 1. But then when I play the A, I'm just going to rock that up there, and that takes my thumb off and my first finger off. E, A, E, A, E, A, E, A. Like on song number 31. E, A, E, A. So I just call it rock and roll. You're just rocking and rolling between those 2 notes. Opening that key up, uncovering the 2 holes, covering the 2 holes back up. Just rock back and forth. Don't make a giant motion to move that finger up there. Just rock it up there to the A. Okay? And as always, whenever we're learning new notes, the hardest part of new notes is reading them. So playing that A or that new G or that new E for a saxophone, that's not difficult to play, learn how to play it. It's just difficult to learn how to read it. We've got to make ourselves read that new note. It's going to be that 3rd one up. There's going to be that new note. So as you're practicing that, make sure you're working hard on reading it. It's not hard to play. It's hard to read, to remember how to read it. Same thing over on the new note on number 36. Now, we take now a look at number 32. We have one other, it was actually introduced on number 24, but we don't always play number 24. And that's the concept of what we call a duet. Now, a duet, of course, is just two people playing or two people singing, in this case playing. And what happens is we have two lines of music. Let me scoot over a little bit. We have two lines of music that are now connected by one big beam over here on the side. So those two lines of music are going to be played at the exact same time. There's a part A and there's a part B. So while one person, like this is the clarinet book, A, G, 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 at the same time someone else will be playing F, 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 E, E, E. And they sound good together. So duets are a lot of fun, but they're also a little tricky because you hear people playing things different than yours. Then you'll notice, especially in measure 4, while this person up here is playing a whole note, they're down here playing quarter notes. Quarter, 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 rest, quarter, rest, quarter, rest, half. You got all this stuff going on, but people doing things slightly different. Learn to play both parts. Often we'll use this song and have everybody play A and B, or play like part A while the other person plays part B, and then switch, and then you play part B while the other person plays part A. And we could, of course, we could do this with a whole band. You could do it with a friend. And don't forget that number 24. That's a fun one to play with a friend as well. Let's go back to our 5-note scale and our 7-note scale page. The top is the 5-note scale, and we showed you how to fill that out. But as we scan toward the bottom, you see that there's now 3 more lines at the bottom that say 7-note scale. Now this is basically the same thing. It's the same 5-note scale we did earlier, but we're adding those 2 new notes from number 30 and number 36. So in this case, we're looking at a saxophone, G, A, B, C, D. That's the normal, but then we're adding that new E on top. For the clarinets and trumpets, it would be a new A on top. For the flutes, it would be a new G on top. For the trombones, baritones, it would also be a new G on top. So that's going to have one note there on top that's different. Then on the way back down, it's going to be the same notes again. D, C, B, A, G. Then we have the other low new note down here next to last. In this case, it's an F sharp. On the trumpets and clarinets, it's going to be a B. On the flutes and trombones, baritones, it's going to be an A. And then going back to the last note being your original note, which is a G here, or a B flat, or a C, depending on what instrument you're playing. Okay, so the 7-note scale is just going to add those 2 new notes, and one new high one, one new low one, and now we can play it and practice those together. Just like by practicing the notes on number 5, we were able to learn how to play the test for October, which is number 25. The same thing we can do by learning the 7-note scale. This is going to teach us all the notes we need to learn for our next test, which happens to be song number 41. So I'm going to turn over to that. That's going to be on page 11, down here at the bottom right-hand corner. As we look over here, we take a look at a couple of things. We see that there's 41, and look at our time signature. Again, time signature. And it says a 2 over a 4. And what does that mean? 2 beats to a measure. A quarter note gets 1 beat. Woo! And so instead of having 2 or 4 beats in each measure, notice we have like a quarter note's worth 1 beat, another quarter note's worth 1 beat, and all of a sudden we have a bar line. 1, 2, bar line. 1, 2, bar line. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And so that's where we get the different time signatures. They become very important. If it says 2, 4, you'll never count higher than 2 while you're counting and clapping the song. If it says 3, 4, you'd never count higher than 3. If it says 4, 4, you'd never count higher than 4. So this is our test for, it's actually leading us to our test for November, which is the number 41, which gives us really good control over our 7-note scale. So from that point on, when we can play those 7 notes and play half notes, half rest, quarter notes, quarter rest, whole notes, whole rest, we can play all the songs up through page 11. Remember that as you can play up through 41 and you're doing very well on that, don't let that stop you. Look ahead. Now if you look on the next page, you're going to see just some songs, but if you're going to look at page 13, we're going to be learning a new concept called 8th notes. And go ahead and look at the November video, the teaching video for that, if you'd like to move ahead and learn how to do 8th notes. And then of course we'll be doing it in class in the next few weeks after that. We have one more thing to look at. This one's for the drums only, so the rest of you can go ahead and stop and go back and work on something, or now switch over to the October playing video and try to play some of these songs as well. All right, have fun with that.